Good morning, everybody. Today, you guys are joining us for our International Payment Compliance and Tax Obligations webinar. Today's speakers will be myself, Kyle, and Chris. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Chris. I am the VP of Operations here at Xtrm. I've been with Xtrm for about 10 years now, and I oversee several departments, including our Customer Success Department, Compliance Department, and Payments Department.
Awesome. And then I am Kyle Sloat. I'm our VP of Sales and Partnerships. So I'd be your go-to guy if you have any questions about working with Xtrm, working with us through any of our integration partners, commercials, or really just how to use Xtrm in general.
Thank you, Kyle. And my name is Gamaley. I'm here as a product manager at Xtrm. If you guys have any product questions, any integration questions, anything technical, you guys can feel free to address those towards me. So we're just going to go ahead and jump straight into the presentation.
Thanks, Lev. So how do incentive partner payments look with a traditional banking system? Incentive payments with traditional banking involves the collection of adequate data in order to process a successful banking transaction. In most cases, that's a person's name, maybe their address, and in some countries, you're going to be required to have a personal tax identification number, maybe even a phone number to be transmitted along with the payment instructions. The requirements vary depending on the bank, really. You need to collect the banking details, of course, institution name, perhaps an IBAN, maybe SWIFT, bank or routing code, account number, and the associated currency of the recipient's bank account. The process itself can be a bit slow, prone to errors as the data moves through a variety of personnel in order to obtain and ultimately to execute the transfer. Let's talk a little bit about the data that we're collecting here. You're obviously collecting some personally identifying information and banking information. You're likely storing that, and when you do so, there's a need to meet the data privacy requirements enacted by various governments, such as the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe. The United States has its own national level consumer protection laws, and 20 of the 50 United States each have their own consumer data privacy regulations. So storing the data properly to meet privacy and data protection regulations means you should be using some kind of a encryption that's going to help against a potential data breach. Reviewing processes and methods of data handling will help to ensure that the systems that hold the data are adequately secured. You're likely going to want to also have regular vulnerability scans and testing performed on those systems that are storing the data. And what about information that needs to be provided to the local tax body at the end of the fiscal year? I think we all know that traditional banks don't provide any tax forms back to you. They retain the transaction history only. Individual recipients are universally responsible for reporting their income, but there can be circumstances where it's also mandatory for the remitting party to also report to the tax agency. For European payments, the VAT may become an additional concern if your primary service isn't money transferring. That could potentially increase your costs associated with that incentive, or even reducing the amount of that incentive that you're offering. And what happens if the wire was sent to the wrong person? Well, banking errors are not uncommon. Typically, if any of the criteria are off by a single character, the bank transfer is likely to be automatically returned, but that causes additional delays. Now you're waiting for the funds to be returned, or you're obtaining the correct data from the recipient, and then you're reissuing the bank transfer. In rare cases, though, the transfer is not automatically returned. Sometimes the banking details that are provided actually match an account at that institution. But of course, there can be times where your intended recipient is claiming non-receipt. So now you have to cancel and recall that particular transfer. And if you don't perform that rapidly enough, in some cases, the erroneous recipient must agree to return the funds. Audit potential. With financial transactions, especially internationally, there's the reality of economic sanctions. Many countries have enacted financial regulations on money movement to prevent funding of terrorism and money laundering. A multinational coalition was formed in 1989 called the Financial Action Task Force. They set the global standards for countries to strive towards in regards to money laundering and anti-terrorism. 39 countries have implemented their own anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing regulations to be in line with those standards. Each country maintains sanction lists that identify bad actors and have regulations that penalize financial activity to certain entities. The entities can be a single person, it could be a group of people, it could be a business, a vessel, could even be an entire nation. In some countries, even if you're unaware that you've transferred funds to a sanctioned entity, you're still liable and you can be fined by the government, most times pretty substantially, like in the millions, sometimes tens of millions. So knowing who you can safely transfer funds to is paramount. So do you know? Xtrm is the answer to how you can safely and securely transfer funds without these risks. Kyle has more details.
Thanks, Chris. So I'll go over a little bit about some of the key things about Xtrm that really reduce and solve a lot of these issues. So the first pillar of that's going to be our status as a third-party settlement organization. So what is a third-party settlement organization? Well, essentially what that means is you pay Xtrm by funding your wallet, and Xtrm is the one paying your partners. So along with that, we also take on all of the compliance and tax obligations that Chris mentioned. And not only are we doing that as a service, right? We're taking on the obligation itself and helping protect you. Also with the third-party settlement organization, because we're a financial institution and we're performing these transactions, they're not subject to that. So the other key pillar of Xtrm is our built-in payee manager. So what is the built-in payee manager? Essentially, it is tied to your recipient's Xtrm wallet, and it facilitates instant wallet-to-wallet transfers anywhere in the world with just an email address. So it makes it super easy for you guys to pay partners or beneficiaries anywhere in the world without having to yourself collect and store that potentially risky data. So once a partner or beneficiary receives a payment to their Xtrm wallet, they'll be automatically prompted by the payee manager to collect that sensitive data and store it properly. So what about the tax piece? So as mentioned before, we're taking on the tax reporting obligation. So that's something that you guys will no longer need to worry about with the payments. And in addition to just taking on the obligation, we perform some services as well, such as providing the 99Ks here in the US to your recipients, as well as an international equivalent. What about the audit potential? So, one of the key parts we've talked about that I really just want to drive home is not only are we, doing this as part of the service, collecting all this information, doing the reporting, we're also taking on the obligation of doing so. So, your audit potential is, greatly reduced, and essentially, if there was to be any sort of audit, you could come to Xtrm and we would be able to provide all transactional history for the entirety of your time transacting with Xtrm, and we also have robust reporting capabilities to make it really easy for you to sort. Even if it's not just an audit, but really easily be able to sort through your payments and find the information that you guys require.
Thank you guys for that. So to quickly summarize, the first portion we discussed all the sticking points and frictions that are possible with a traditional banking system trying to process payments both domestically and internationally. And then Kyle highlighted the points at the end here of how Xtrm has solved these friction points, for our clients and made it quite easy and streamlined to be able to process anywhere internationally. So first and foremost, we got to discuss the comprehensive tax and compliance coverage that Xtrm provides to our clients. Again, taking on as a third-party settlement organization the obligation for any payments created or processed. The second most important portion was the built-in payee manager. So the payee manager will fill in any gaps in information, sensitive data, handle that sensitive data both in transit and storage, and collect any information that's needed in residual. And then the final piece that we want to discuss here is, again, the storage of that sensitive information. So to protect your clients from data breaches, any kind of hacking attempts, anything in that nature, Xtrm is built with a robust and secure architecture to make sure that none of this data is going to slip through the cracks and go anywhere that it's not supposed to be. Are there any questions for any of the solutions or implementations that Xtrm has provided to our clients? If anyone has any questions, we're open forum here. The presentation is now over. Please do not be shy to ask any questions if you do have any. Once again, today's speakers were Chris, Kyle, and myself. The VP of Operations is Chris, so if you guys have any kind of operational questions, you guys can address them to him. In terms of partnership and sales, you guys can feel free to address Kyle and reach out to him. And any kind of technical, spin-up questions or integration questions, feel free to address to myself. So once again, open forum here, guys. If there are any questions, please feel free to shoot. We'll stay online here for another 2 minutes. And if there aren't any questions, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time once again, and we can move on.
And if there's any question you'd like to take offline, our emails are right there, so you could email us directly.
Okay, it seems like we don't have any questions so far. So appreciate your time once again, guys. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.